The story begins by showing a car parked in front of someone's house. Inside the house, a little girl becomes curious and decides to go outside to check it out. She hears a sound calling out to her, subtle yet impossible to ignore. But when she goes over to investigate, no one is there. It turns out a strange man, someone very eerie, has arrived, bringing a gift for the little girl. Then suddenly,
What happens if
20 years after that incident, we are introduced to Lee, a promising new FBI agent. It is her first day on the job, and she and her colleague have been assigned to arrest a criminal suspect in a suburban area. Somehow, Lee intuitively pinpoints the suspect's house number and even suggests that her partner ask for backup. The partner refuses, feeling confident he can handle the situation alone. Unfortunately, while entering the house, the partner is shot by the suspect, resulting in a fatal outcome. Lee's heart drops, but she has no choice. She forces herself to enter the suspect's residence and finds him calmly waiting, ready to confess and turn himself in. Following that incident, Lee undergoes a specialized test, similar to a psychological evaluation, where she must respond to every question posed to her. Eventually, it becomes clear that Lee possesses a sixth sense and can see things undetectable by most people. Thanks to these abilities, she is then paired with a senior agent named Carter to investigate a serial murder case that has been ongoing for the past 20 years, with no visible resolution. Investigators have never been able to identify a perpetrator, but each crime scene involves an entire family as victims. The husband always ends up taking the lives of his children and wife first, before ultimately ending his own. If the killer is indeed the husband, then why is this labeled a serial murder? It turns out that at every crime scene, investigators discover a piece of occult-like stationery, each containing satanic symbols or codes, signed with the name Longlegs. Moreover, it is clear that this writing does not match any of the victim's handwriting. This implies that a third party, an unseen culprit, has systematically orchestrated these killings. Oddly enough, investigators have never found any physical evidence that an outsider entered the victims' homes. This is precisely the puzzle Lee, with her sixth sense, must solve. Using her heightened perception, Lee draws connections between the cases and notices a pattern. Each family has a 9-year-old daughter born on the 14th day of a particular month, and every murder occurs within 6 days before or after that daughter's birthday. After presenting her theory to Carter, Lee drives him home because he has had too many drinks during the discussion. There, she meets his wife and his daughter, Ruby, who extends a warm invitation for Lee to attend Ruby's upcoming birthday party. Ruby seems to assume that Lee is a close friend of her father. After leaving Carter's place, Lee heads back to her own home, which lies far from any bustling areas. Late that same night, while speaking on the phone with her mother, Lee hears a knock at her front door. She recognizes that it is extremely late for visitors and becomes alarmed, deciding to firmly secure the door. Suddenly, she sees a figure standing outside in her front yard. Without hesitation, she summons her courage and goes out to check. Mysteriously, the figure has already slipped behind her and enters her house. By the time she looks around, the mysterious visitor has vanished, leaving behind a letter containing a birthday card for Lee's 9th birthday, created by Longlegs. Inside the card is a satanic code, complete with translations, warning Lee not to interfere. Otherwise, Longlegs threatens to do harm, even to the point of endangering her mother. Early the next morning, another family murder takes place with the same recurring pattern. Lee is now quite familiar with these satanic codes and quickly translates the latest note left at the scene, offering a small clue to guide the investigation. Meanwhile, we see someone driving a vintage car to a psychiatric hospital where a patient named Carrie is being treated. It is none other than Longlegs. He makes a brief stop at a hardware store, seemingly to look at something.
Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo.
Confused, the clerk calls out to someone else in the back, causing Longlegs to leave without explanation. 2 days later, Lee and Carter visit that very psychiatric hospital. A doctor there informs them that someone visited Carrie 2 days prior, signing the visitor log using Lee's full name, Lee Harker. Taken aback, Lee and Carter suspect it must have been Longlegs who used her name. The doctor also reveals that Carrie, originally diagnosed with catatonia, a mental condition marked by difficulty with movement and communication, suddenly recovered after that visit and was able to speak freely. Catatonia often includes restlessness, confusion, and an inability to engage normally with surroundings. Yet, once Longlegs stopped by, Carrie remarkably improved. When Lee meets Carrie in person, the narrative flashes back to the day Carrie lost her entire family. That morning, Carrie had gone to school, leaving behind her parents and younger sister, who was 9 and only 6 days away from celebrating her birthday. Not long after Carrie left, a nun arrived at their home with a birthday gift on behalf of the church, which turned out to be a doll crafted by Longlegs that resembled a little girl. Then, as if possessed, Carrie's family members started acting in a frenzy. Her father abruptly slaughtered all their farm animals, ended Carrie's sister's life, then killed a visiting pastor who happened to stop by, as well as Carrie's mother, before turning his weapon on himself. When Lee asks what Longlegs did during his recent visit, Carrie becomes visibly elated, stating that she had been waiting for him, ready to do whatever he asked, even jumping from a window if needed. She mentions a figure called the man downstairs, implying some powerful individual. Carrie is eager to serve both Longlegs and the man downstairs. Further investigation by Carter uncovers a startling piece of information, suggesting that Lee herself may be connected to all this. About 20 years ago, Lee's mother had filed a police report about an intruder in their home, only to withdraw it a day before Lee's 9th birthday. Carter concludes that the intruder was likely Longlegs, and questions Lee about whether she remembers seeing him, what he looked like, and so forth. Lee can hardly recall any details, leaving her confused and silent. Hoping for clarity, Carter instructs Lee to visit her mother to learn more about the intruder's characteristics, hoping to identify Longlegs and resolve the case quickly, especially with budgets tightening for their department. Upon arriving home, Lee's mother greets her warmly and immediately asks if she still prays. Lee replies that she never prays at all, and for some reason, her mother finds this hilarious, treating it as though it is the funniest thing she has ever heard. This is rather strange, given that her mother is known to be very devout. After their conversation, Lee heads to her childhood bedroom, recalling her old Polaroid camera from long ago. While rifling through photos, she stumbles on one showing Longlegs. It becomes clear that the small child from the opening scene was Lee herself, and that the intruder her mother had reported was indeed Longlegs. Realizing the urgency, Lee immediately meets with Carter to show him the photo of Longlegs. Together, they set out to locate him, and it appears that Longlegs deliberately stands by a roadside, carrying luggage, as though he wants to be found. In the interrogation room, Longlegs admits he has turned himself in specifically to say happy birthday to Lee. To avoid alerting the rest of the FBI, Carter clears the room, leaving only Lee and Agent Browning, Carter's trusted colleague. There, Lee describes her theory that Longlegs must have accomplices helping carry out his murders. She got this idea upon finding that one particular symbol detail in the occult symbols was incomplete, hinting that Longlegs has associates still at large. Curious about this possibility, Lee insists on entering the interrogation room to confront Longlegs directly, determined to figure out who his helpers might be. However, Longlegs merely responds by mentioning Lee's mother. Suddenly uneasy, Lee wonders why her mother's name is coming up in this horrifying scheme.
Why don't you ask your mommy?
Realizing he has nothing left to lose, Longlegs kills himself by forcefully bashing his head against the table. This dramatic suicide prompts Carter to scold Lee, accusing her of being too fixated on mysticism and the supernatural. Meanwhile, tensions escalate further when word comes in that Carrie, the same psychiatric patient, has been found dead, having jumped from her hospital room window. That same day, Lee and Agent Browning hurry to her mother's house to verify what Longlegs said. Upon their arrival, Lee searches for her mother inside but cannot find her, until the mother abruptly appears and shoots Agent Browning. Lee is momentarily stunned. She sees that her mother has also fired upon a doll closely resembling young Lee, causing a metal sphere inside the doll's head to ignite and release a black mist, which simultaneously emerges from Lee's own head as well, Overwhelmed, Lee collapses. In her unconscious state, Lee experiences another flashback. As a child, she witnesses Longlegs attacking her mother. He forces the mother to choose, either let young Lee be sacrificed as part of his ritual, or pledge herself as Longlegs' accomplice in carrying out future terrible acts. Desperate to save her only child, the mother chooses to become Longlegs' partner in crime. Astonishingly, we learn that for years, Longlegs has been secretly living in the basement beneath Lee's home. Lee does not remember any of this because her recollections were supernaturally sealed in a black metal ball tucked inside a doll. Over those 20 years, Longlegs has been making dolls of little girls, replicating the appearances of his prospective victims. These dolls were cursed, causing each targeted family to fall into a form of possession and unconsciously fulfill Longlegs' brutal designs. Meanwhile, Lee's mother served as a disguised nun, delivering those dolls under the pretense that they were gifts from a church, making it difficult for families to refuse. When Lee regains consciousness, she finds herself in the basement where Longlegs once hid. From an upstairs telephone, Carter is trying to call her to talk about his daughter Ruby's birthday, which happens to be that very day. Lee realizes that Ruby is turning 9, meaning she could be the key piece completing Longlegs' twisted plan of an inverted occult symbol. Lee rushes to Carter's home but arrives too late. Inside, she sees her own mother present, along with a doll that Ruby is innocently playing with. While Carter and his wife head to the kitchen, Lee asks her mother why she would continue the ritual now that Longlegs is gone. Her mother replies that the ritual must go on as planned, so their souls can be spared and shielded from the torment of eternal fire. The mother's delusions hint that she is no longer motivated by motherly love, but has fully succumbed to Longlegs' creed. Right then, Carter emerges from the kitchen in a trance, having just ended his wife's life. Trapped by this dire situation, Lee has no choice but to shoot Carter. She also must shoot her own mother to end this nightmarish scenario before it claims more victims. The only ones left are Ruby, who remains possessed, and the doll that is still intact. Lee decides not to destroy the doll for reasons unknown. Perhaps in her view, leaving it as is might be better for everyone. The movie closes with Lee's tearful face. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.